My name is Aleknavicius. Again, most people call me Dr. Lori for lack of trying on the last name. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been in practice about 15 years, licensed in 3 states right now, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and California. Very different cultures, very different places. Makes my work pretty amazing because it gives me a lot of variety. So my husband, who's actually here in the back of the room, Dr. Patrick, he and I started the practice together. The practice is called Inner Focus. We originally started it in Duluth, Minnesota. Does anybody know where Duluth, Minnesota is? It's an amazing place. It's really, really cold for like 8 months, though, of the year. So go in the summer, for starters. But it's awesome. We lived there for quite some time. We started our practice there, and that practice still remains. It's been about 12 years. It's been about 12 years that we've had that office open. We left because we got a little too cold, but we left the practice open, and we have clinicians that work there for us. We remain licensed in the state, so we can see people virtually. And then we came over to California. We came to California because we went to school here, graduate school here, and we were licensed in California. So it's a lot easier to go state to state if you have a license there. Otherwise, you have to pick up a new license, and that's a challenging process. So we originally started in Irvine, California, our Inner Focus location. Then we moved into Laguna Beach, and then 2020 hit. And our office closed because it didn't make any sense to have all of that overhead when we couldn't see people in the office for so long. The good thing for our practice was that we had virtual services in place because we've been seeing people in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So we did well, we continued, and we continue to this day to see people throughout California and throughout Wisconsin and California. I put my email on here. I seriously welcome emails from people anytime you have a question, a parenting question, something about, oh, what do you think about me, doing this with my child or not? I love when people email and ask quick questions. I think that's great. I also put our Instagram up there, office phone, and my mobile business cell phone as well. So I give all this information out to people, again, trying to open the doors to communication. Okay, so the start of our presentation. There's nothing permanent except change. This is something that I tell myself all the time. As a matter of fact, this morning, when we got here, and the tech was not working the way that we would like it to, and the podium was too tall for my height. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure if I have enough ports in my computer to set up the cords that I need to make this presentation work. So it's all about that things are constantly changing, and that's okay, actually. We can kind of roll with it. We can go with it. What I found with parenting is that we think that we have it nailed at one point, like my baby's sleeping through the night, yes. And then what happens the next night? That child's not sleeping. That child's up all night long, crying, or the food isn't working. So this idea of flexibility is really key. So I always think about this. It's one of my quotes that I kind of hold in my head, basically. I think it's really vital as we go through the presentation to keep this in mind. I'll refer to this multiple times because parenting does require change and flexibility. Okay, the 6 stages of parenting. There's a book that was written a long time ago that I still think is really valuable, and that's where I took kind of used these 6 stages of parenting from. I want to tell you the name of the author. It's Ellen Galinsky. It's her book, 1980 book. I've looked at many parenting books for my practice again and what I do for work, and I think this one holds a lot of value with how she named the stages of parenting. So this isn't really about what your kids go through, this is about what you go through. This is like an amazing concept, right? Because we are always talking about what our kids need, what our kids want, what our kids are asking for, what our kids require, but what about our parents? Right? So you guys require a lot too, and you have to think about what you're going through as parents. So these are the stages that she named for parenting. So I want to go through them because I'm kind of setting a premise for the talk. So I want to start with the basics here of the stages that we go through as parents. I'm sure as we all sit in this room, we have different aged children, right? And so everybody's kind of going through different stages. Mine, just so you know, I have 3. They are 8. Nope. They are 10. 12, I was just telling the story before I started. 10, 12, and 14. Let me tell you the story. The story was I handed out my oldest daughter's school picture for this year. She's in 9th grade, but I handed it out to close family members. And on the back, I wrote 8th grade school picture. And her grandfather was like, she's not in 8th grade. And I was like, thank you, yes. Flexibility of mindset. She is not in 8th grade. She's actually in 9th grade, but I kind of place her there, and I place my 10-year-old as 8, so it's a hot, it's a hot issue here. So the 6 stages of parenting. Remember, we're being flexible. We're not all going to fit exactly into these stages, but in general, I want to go through them a little bit here. The first one is the image-making stage. So rewind time here for a quick second. So before you had children, even before you were pregnant, and then maybe during pregnancy, right? You were imagining what you were going to be like as a parent. You were imagining what that baby was going to look like. You were imagining how the room was going to be and what you're going to do and how the family's going to be. And you're probably looking to media for some of this or to family members as reference points. So during that stage, it's really important that people are thinking about the image and what they want for their family, and they're preparing for parenthood before the baby is born. It's a beautiful stage that then gets wrecked by the time we get to number 2. Right? Because all the things you thought you were going to do and be, you might be some of them for sure. You might work hard to get to that place or space that you wanted to, but for the most part, those ideas were not super on point. So when we get to stage 2, which I have the ages here, so once the baby's born until about age 1.5, we're in the nurturing stage. And this is where there's a huge attachment, right? This is the most important part of that time period, is attaching to the baby. And many people that are caregivers actually wear their babies. Like it's literally like an extension of the body of the caregiver. It could be a nanny, it could be a mom, a dad, whoever is caring for that child, but the baby knows no different at that stage than I am you and you are me. And that's really important, right? We're protecting that baby, we're nurturing that baby, we're building that attachment. And so during this time, parents are working through, how do I care for this child though, right? Like how much time do I spend wearing my child, for example? How much time do I allow them to do tummy time and struggle and cry and look super uncomfortable? How much time do I talk to them or read to them, right? There's a lot of questions that parents go through, and where do we go for the answers to these questions? To books, obviously. We try to find the right book, right, that has all the answers to all the questions that we have. And so during this time period, there's a lot of change occurring because it goes from I think this is right to I think that is right, and kind of ever changing. When we get to stage 3, this is a toddler, good old toddler stages, right? Authority stage. So this is a challenging one for parents. This is when you have to figure out how to be an authority figure for your child. So an authority figure of how am I going to discipline them? How am I going to say no? What are my rules and expectations? What boundaries do I have? How do I set those boundaries? And then in multiple parent or two family parent households, how do we play off of each other on that? Who sets the rules, or do we both set them, and do we both hold them to the same expectation or not? This is a challenging one. People talk about toddlerhood, being parents of toddlers, being very challenging, and it being very exhausting, right? Because that toddler, their job is to test those limits constantly. And your job is to try to figure out how you don't let them push too hard, but let them push a little bit so that they have some flexibility and they know that they have some control, because that's what that child is looking for during that stage. During stage 3 also, we are teaching kids about our expectation for them, what we want them to do, how we want them to have certain manners, how we even want them to dress potentially during this time. So when we get to stage 4, which is the interpretive stage, this is school age, essentially. This is from kindergarten until about 8th grade. So all the things that you told those children in that bubble, which is your house, they then go into the world and they say, wait a second, there are really rude people in the world, Mom, right? Or there are kids that wear, figure it out, whatever, things on their shirts that we don't wear, or we don't have the, let's say a family that doesn't have the capacity to buy a certain brand that's really big at that point in time, and how they might look different than the other kids at school, right? So during this stage, parents are having to field questions about, what about the world you told me, Mom and Dad, and that's not what I see. So how do we make sense of that, right? And so the child's going through a lot during this stage, but so are the parents. And there's a lot of conversations usually that are needing to be had during this time about what do we tell our child? How do we explain this to them, that even though we set the precedent and we have these rules, that's not what you're seeing out there, or you're seeing push those rules. People push those rules. So there's a lot of not so easy conversations that are had, and the parents have to really review their values, what they believe, what they think about parenting this child. Now remember, we talked about image making in stage 1, and now we're down here at stage 4. A lot has happened from what you thought to where you actually are at that point. And it's not just about you as a parent developing, it's also about your child. So if you guys have multiple children, raise your hand if you have multiple children. Okay, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you have multiple children that are strikingly different. Yes. Okay, so this makes it even better, because when you go through the stage again, you don't have it. You have no idea, because your child is a whole different ball of attributes, right, or qualities than the first. So the lessons that you apply to the first maybe now don't apply to the second. Never mind that you're X amount of years older, right? Which means, I think, that you have better life experience and ability to handle the things that are in front of you, but it might also come with stress. Like sometimes families are going through divorces or job changes or financial changes or something, so that can stress the family as well. So even though we've gone through these stages with one child, when the second one comes, or the third or the fourth, it can look quite different. This is not even taking into consideration blended families. So blended families or stepchildren or whatever it might be, they might be coming or entering your household in a whole different stage and place with different parenting expectations, so that's also quite challenging. Okay, so when we get to stage 5, this is the interdependent stage. This is high school through about college age, essentially. So this is the continued growth stage, certainly for the child, but this is when parents have to really manage some of the expectations that they had that are not coming to fruition, right? So for example, I expected my child to value education and go to college. And my child said, nope, I'm not going to college, Mom, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go live with my friends in Mexico, and I'm just gonna surf for a while. Right, like that's just one example, but that could happen, that could really happen. And so that's a challenge for a lot of parents, because that's not the precedent they set, that's not what they did, that's not what they said, that's not the values that they set out. And so during this stage, parents are really having to manage how they talk to their children about this and how they handle this stress. And another, I guess, good example would be going into high school, and I think changing the style of dress or hair, piercings, people wanting tattoos, like, some external changes. That can be really unsettling for some parents. They don't like that. They don't know what to do with that. They see it as almost like a threat to their stance or their view on life, when it's really just the child expressing some desire to be independent, very independent at that point in time. So this stage is really a tough one too for parents, but talking it through again, breaking that mental health stigma like I talked about earlier, being flexible and kind of creative, talking to other parents about what they do or people in your family, just to see that a lot of this is very normal to feel these things and to go through these changes and these stages. And finally, number 6, departure stage. So be honest, your kids are not here. Raise your hand if you can't wait to get to number 6. Anybody? Anybody? I mean, some people are like dying to get there. They like dream. I have clients that tell me they dream about their children leaving the house. Now, will they cry when they leave? Probably. But the idea of like, you could have some mixed emotions. Mixed emotions are actually very healthy. So part of you some days wants those children to leave now. And part of you never wants them to leave and wants them to live in your basement. Oh, not California, not basement. So live in your, guest room for quite some time. Which, funny enough, is the trend that we're seeing, actually. Like, we are seeing a trend, and I'm waiting to see what research shows us on this, but we're seeing that many families in America are remaining together. Kids are staying with their parents for a long time. Like, too long, essentially. At some point in time, they really need to go. They can come back, not with their children and your grandchildren, I don't think, but like, yes, maybe a little too long, maybe a little bit too much dependence on their parents, a little bit too much of this cohabitation. I need to save my money when they could have been saving money, for quite some time if they were working. So we're seeing that there is this trend of people staying for quite some time, wanting to go through college, even with living at home, but then remaining as they go into their career, which is not what we would see quite some time ago. I was dying to leave. I could not wait to leave my house. If they didn't tell me to go, I was already gone. I was already packed. My parents also wanted me to leave, I think, too, so that was a good thing. We were both in agreement that it was time to go. But the departure stage is also, for parents, another time that they really have to manage expectations, right? So this idea of what that child is doing when they leave, and then what the parents are doing. So what do we do when our world as we know it has been altered significantly? We don't have somebody arguing with us every day. We don't have laundry to do nonstop, right? We don't have meals to cook for 6 people or something. What does that look like for parents, right? This can be a very lonely and overwhelming stage. So parents are trying to manage during this stage their expectations of what I'm going to do and what I'm going to look like and how I'm going to manage and how I'm going to welcome my kids back into my house. So am I going to create new traditions? Am I going to welcome, for example, their partners to come with on family vacations because I want time with my adult children? How am I going to manage that? So this is an interesting stage. Okay, so knowing this, let's just go into one of my favorite videos for you guys to watch. This is just a little humor. If you haven't caught on already, I really appreciate humor. And I use it daily. It's a high-order defense, so that's okay. We can use humor a lot, and I love humor because it gives me a little dose of reality in my day-to-day, and I think that it really helps to decompress. This is a very quick video.
There will be no plastic toys in the house. 0 screen time. They will only eat organic meals that I've made from scratch. Playing outside is food for the child's soul.
We can't go to the park today, sweetheart. They're all shut.
I will never badmouth the child's father in front of them.
Daddy's going to do bedtime, okay? Because he's been on his phone for the last 2 hours.
Emotional blackmail will not be in my parents' toolbox.
That makes Molly feel so sad.
I will never use my phone in front of my child.
Help, I'm trapped on this island. I am playing, sweetheart.
Okay, if that does not ring true for people in this room, I'm not so sure what you guys are up to. But the idea of we have these expectations, we set these rules, we have really very positive intention, right? Which is amazing. We want to have good food, we want to have less device time, so on and so forth. All of that is fabulous. We want to have goals and we want to work towards our goals, but we also have to insert a little bit of humor and realize that we fail at those goals repeatedly, right? And so on a similar note, I always try to educate parents that I work with too, that while we set goals and expectations for our children, they also fail those goals and expectations sometimes, right? So if we can fail, they can fail, yes? If we accept our failure, we need to accept their failure. So parents are real quick to be harsh with their children about what they're doing wrong or how they're not getting it just so, but who's modeling? We are, right? And so trying to think about that and be a little bit more kind, maybe more compassionate with our children, which goes into this quote, another one that I hold true in my mind all the time. Your child will follow your example, not your advice. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't talk to your kids and you shouldn't give them advice. You certainly should. But what it really is talking about is that they're looking at you as the main role model, you and whoever else, other adults in their life that are important. So it could be the other parents in the household as well, grandparents if they play a big part, if there's very close family friends that you spend a lot of time with, those children are watching those adults all the time. So this is the work I do with children, just so you know. So I feel like I have a really good inside scoop to what these kids are looking at and what they're watching, because when they talk to me as their therapist, they're talking to me like a private source, right? That I won't tell people, and I won't divulge any specific information here, but that they're telling me some pretty private things about what they're seeing, what they're observing, and what they're noticing. And I have to tell you, these kids are really paying attention to what is happening. And so many parents have told me, I don't think they have any idea that me and their dad fight. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, they know exactly, not only that you fight, but what you fight about, and when the fight occurs, and what this person said to that person. I mean, they can retell the story, but they were in the other room on their device, so that's kind of strange, right? Because you think that they're distracted with something, but they really are paying attention. So I think it's really important to think about, how am I modeling? Now, this is not negative pressure, this is just honest pressure that we can put on ourselves to say, how am I doing today? Right? How am I doing as a parent? How am I holding myself? And then how am I talking to my kids about my example? I'll tell you, one of my most, remarkable parenting moments was a time that I got frustrated with my son, who is a very picky eater, and he wanted a snack as we're running out the door to school. And we're already kind of running late. And he doesn't eat a lot, basically, at that time. He was very picky, and so him wanting something was like, you should get him that something that he wants, but it was frustrating and taxing. And I remember running in the house and grabbing it and literally throwing it at him as I got in the car. And as soon as I did, I'm not a kind of person who's aggressive or who throws things or gets mad easily, but I was frustrated. And it was like one of those moments where you know that what you just did was not cool, right? So you have like one of those like, oh man. And so I did it, and I think I shocked him because he kind of had this look on his face like, what are you doing? Where's my mom? And I turned around and just said, I'm so sorry. I was just really frustrated because we're running late, and I shouldn't have done that. Please eat the snack while we drive to school. I was able to catch myself. This is through years and years of work, by the way. This is not easy to do. But the idea of like years and years of reflecting, especially in my job, of if we can't catch ourselves soon, we miss the moment, right? So if I tell him 5 days later, hey, when I threw that thing at you, like that was not cool, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like it's already gone, right? Like so many moments have happened in that child's life. So catching it in the moment was remarkable to me because I saw how it shifted the dynamic. It went from him being kind of shocked and ultimately a little bit sad about my reaction to him understanding. And kids are phenomenal in their flexibility, most kids. Most kids are quite flexible that if you apologize or if you say, hey, come here, I just want to tell you this thing, they will listen and they will flex much better than adults do. Adults are very rigid usually, and they don't like to flex very much. So I like to think about this idea of like the example I'm setting, including the mistakes I'm making, because we all make mistakes, and if we can acknowledge that we make those mistakes to our children in child-appropriate terms, it's beautiful. It works out and it teaches them what we want. Okay, so we went from parenting stages to family values. So this is another way to kind of set the stage for growing or raising our children to be self-aware, self-confident, and having strong family bonds. If we don't discuss our family values, this is like opening a business and not having a business plan. You're like, I'm just gonna buy that shop, and I hope people come. Not sure how I'm going to make that money or that product, but it's going to happen. You need to talk about, in some capacity, what those family values are so that you have a vision. And so I just wrote down a couple ways that I suggest that people work with their families to create this in their family system. So one is the idea of having a family meeting, certainly. I suggest that everybody's involved. I don't think that parents should set family values and place them on their children, and their children have to abide. That's not the kind of job or kind of workplace that I would set up. I would want my team to be with me, right? I want them to join me on my mission, essentially. Now, this varies based on your children's age, obviously. So in the beginning, when your children are very young, you would talk with your partner, or you would just talk with yourself if you're a solo parent, and you would figure out what your values are. And then a lot of times when you're reflecting with your partner, you're thinking about how you were raised. And again, with the work that I do, I hear lots of interesting stories, and some of the stories, or many of the parenting stories are, I hated when my mom, fill in the blank, I didn't like that my parents, right? These are adults telling me this. Like they reflect on what they didn't like about their upbringing. So my flip is, what did you like about your upbringing, right? What do you want to bring from your upbringing to your current family? This is what I think that partners should reflect on. The values that you grew up with that you want to maintain, promote as well. And then we also want to think about individual time and family time. So when we create family values, we often just think about how our family should look as a group. But the group is made up of individuals, right? Everybody starts as one human being, not as a group. So the idea of thinking about how we want to spend time as individuals is really important. So in our society, what we do a lot of times is we just throw our kids into a billion different activities, and that's their individual time. But I'll have to tell you that some kids don't want that. They don't want to be in 12 sports and be running around like crazy people. Give them a voice. How do they want to spend their individual time? Is it that they want to decompress with their phone and watch funny videos? Sure. I mean, after 12 sports, maybe that's what they want to do, and they just want to hang out. That's fine, right? As long as there's a conversation about what that individual time looks like. How long is it? Where is it occurring? To what degree are we allowed to do that or watch that website or that person or something? So we want to think with our family values how we're spending time as a group, but also how we're spending time individually. This includes parents. Okay, again, I think that we often just hyper-focus on our children. We forget that we are also human beings, and we have needs and desires, and that we have interests even, funny enough, that we can engage in as well, because that modeling concept comes into play here too. If we say, hey, children, what would you like to do? Oh, you want to do that? Okay, sure. But then mom and dad only work? That's weird. Right? Mom and dad have to have some other aspects of their lives. They have to have hobbies, they have to have friend time, they have to have couple time, they have to have other things that they do too. So we want to think about together and apart time. I think people should write a mission statement. Remember I was saying that in the beginning I was saying that flexibility counts. So flexibility counts here for family values too. You would never write a mission statement for your family when your kids are real young and have that remaining mission statement forever. You would flex it, you would change it over time. You'd have multiple family meetings to change it. And I wrote some examples of categories. We could have spiritual values, social values, work values, play, financial, health. There's so many categories that you could think of. And then I think you would write your mission statement and you would put your values on display. These are some really cute ideas. This worksheet on the left is pretty awesome. The website is on here, raisingkidswithpurpose.com. And so they created a little worksheet and they have little boxes and you could write down what one goal is in each of those categories. But of course you can change those categories to suit your needs. And then this one on the right is just an example of somebody's family core values, where they wrote the words that they chose, and then they wrote what that means. So, like, for example, under teamwork, they wrote celebrate each other's successes. So in their family, their work as a team, and they want to celebrate each other's successes, which is a beautiful concept. The reason we would put it on the wall is because visuals are key for many people. Seeing something repeatedly, think of like old school billboard idea. Seeing that same billboard every day that you're driving to work, for example, you remember that name. You remember that face, you remember that slogan. The same applies with family values. If your child sees teamwork, humility, celebration, they're internalizing those thoughts and those ideas repeatedly. Having them write the family values is also phenomenal. You shouldn't write it, they should. Make it creative. Okay. So when we know our family values, remember, think of this again like a business plan. If we know what our business plan is, we know our family values, or at least we've talked about them in some capacity, we can have an easier time creating healthy habits. So some things that we're drawing from earlier in the presentation are just a repeat here on this slide. Remembering that we need to model for our children. Remembering that we need to have healthy habits because that helps mind and body be connected in a healthy way. And then per research, I wrote down the top 10 habits that they've noted in families that are healthy. Again, healthy in mind and body. So the first one is key. And this kind of goes in order of importance, by the way. So the first one is key, playing together at all ages and stages. So even when your kids are 15 and they could care less about playing with you, finding a way to play. If they love soccer, go play soccer with them, just for fun, on the field. Just kick the ball, right? If they want to go play laser tag, but you have no interest in laser tag, go play laser tag. Just do it. Get out of your box, get out of your mind, get out of your own way, basically, to connect with your children. The second one is reading. So, parents really are kind of born and bred and educated, I think, to play with their children and to read with their children or to their children from day one. But at some juncture, it changes and we stop doing it. We shouldn't stop doing it. Per research, we should find a way to do it. So maybe it's even reading a book together with your older children. Everybody reads a chapter a night. One night this person reads, the next night, and we're reading it joint together. That's ideal for creating wellness and healthy bonds in families. Third, share at least one meal together without devices. So the trend that I see with parents of young children right now, which kind of goes with the times, but it's not a good trend, is putting our children in front of a phone or an iPad while they're eating. We were just out eating the other night, and they had a little baby at a hibachi place. They're cooking in front of you. Like, that's amazing. That's like pure entertainment. And there was this little child in a high chair that had a phone propped up with a video on of some like animated character. That's not necessary. It's teaching poor habits. Not only is it a poor habit, but it's disengagement from the activity. You're not engaging with the child, they're not engaging with the chef, like things are not going the way they're supposed to in that moment. Is it easier? Does it keep that child quiet? Absolutely. Yes. Is it right? No. Not for engagement and not for growth and development. At times, yes. If somebody's giving a speech and you think your baby's going to be screaming or something and you want to do that, for sure, there's a time and place for that, absolutely. But this idea of sharing a meal a day, so now many parents will say, there is no time. There's no time or space. You can eat your meal in the car. I don't care. Eat the meal in the car and talk while you're going off to lacrosse practice or whatever it might be. That's fine. You can be flexible and creative with this. Maybe it's not even one meal a day together for your family. Maybe it's only on the weekends. In my family, when I was younger, one of the most amazing parts of my upbringing, I think, was having a shared Saturday family meal, where we would have my core family, but then we would have people who we said like, oh, that's my uncle, but he wasn't really my uncle. He's like my dad's best friend, right? Like that sort of concept. But they would all come over and we'd all eat together. Every Saturday, those same people showed up. And we did the same thing. And we ate together and we watched TV together, a show that we all liked, and then we'd go play together, and it was fabulous. You knew that you could count on those core people. So I think the biggest challenge we have here today is schedules being extremely intense, so might not allow for the meal that we're talking about, but the over-reliance on devices, right? So we need to manage that somehow. Devices, by the way, TV, if you have good old traditional TV, that also counts as a device. We're not just talking about phones or iPads, we're also talking about TV, no TV during that time. So communicating openly and learning to listen. This is, again, goes back to that concept of parents are not here to lecture at their children, they're here to converse with their children, discuss, advise, right? Hear what their children have to say, and vice versa. Tell me the last time, I want you to think about this for a second, the last time your child asked you how you are, how your day was, what you did today, how was your meeting? Raise your hand right now if you can think of the last time one of your children asked, please. Nice. Okay. Definitely less than half the people in the room just raised their hand. Now, this is not short of us asking our children how they're doing, because we do, right? I mean, I think that the number one question parents say is like, how was your day? How was your day? How was school? How was school? Like, it's kind of parroting. It's kind of silly. They don't want to talk about school, usually. They could care less. They're so happy to be gone from school. Please ask them a different question when they get in the car, right? Like, see anybody wearing any funny outfits today? Or any new hairstyles you noticed on campus? I mean, come up with some other ideas. Or maybe just tell them a story from your day, right? So there's something happening here where parents and children are not having this back and forth relationship. A lot of times we're caring a lot, we're asking a lot, we're trying to draw information from them, but they're not doing the same to us. So we want to work on that. We want to work on communicating openly, listening and asking questions in both directions. We also want to organize our schedules around healthy activities. So this is things like going to the gym, family nights, Social time, right? We want to make sure that our schedule is made up of a variety of things that are positive for health and wellness. Celebrating individual achievements is another great one. Having traditions, not just celebrating birthdays and celebrating holidays, but more traditions. Like I was saying, my Saturday night family dinner night when I was growing up, that would be what we would call a family tradition in our house. Some people celebrate half birthdays in their family, or certain holidays throughout the year, like they like getting dressed up for St. Patrick's Day. Everybody wears green in the family. It doesn't matter. You can make up your own, Yes Day. You can make up your own Yes Day. Have you guys read the book Yes Day? If you haven't, you should. And make sure you set a lot of rules around how your Yes Day works, or else it costs you a lot of money. They're like, we're going to Disney. You're like, no, we're not, actually. But Yes Day is a great concept. Is the child is in control of how the day goes, and anything they ask for, you say yes to, which you can imagine has to have some rules and boundaries, because your children might ask for things that are not things you're willing to get or do with them. The book is phenomenal, though. So learning from mistakes and finding solutions together is another key. This goes with communicating openly. I was saying this earlier in the presentation. We make mistakes. We have to acknowledge that our kids make mistakes, and we need to find a way to talk about that as a whole, and then work together to solve. What can we do next time? How can we get to school on time tomorrow? What would help you in the morning so that it's less chaotic for you? We don't need to just set out that plan. We need to discuss that plan and have our children be part of the solution. And then winding down together at the end of the night. Okay, so this would be great. If you could take the last hour of their night, because you might stay up a little bit later maybe, but if you could take that last 30 to 60 minutes and spend time with them, it would be phenomenal. If you could put your pajamas on, if you could decompress, if you could put your phone away and have no devices and them have no devices, that would be phenomenal as well. It's easier said than done, I understand. It's not simple, but this is something that's proven to create good and positive, healthy habits for families. Okay, my favorite, just a quick share, my favorite is taking time with my children. Very little time, ultimately, in the grand picture of the day. So I try to carve out 5 to 10 minutes every day in some capacity to do what I call joining with my children. And they don't really know this necessarily. This is me in my head of what I'm doing. So if my daughter's editing videos that she wants to edit, I might just go sit next to her and just look at what she's doing. And I might make a comment about something or say, oh, that's amazing that you know how to use that program so well. I might kind of reflect on what she's doing, but I'm not trying to guide her. I'm not trying to change what she's doing. I'm not trying to question her, and I'm not asking her a million things in that moment to distract her either. I'm just trying to kind of sit with her and be with her ultimately at that time. This is similar to joining your child who's playing with Legos, let's say, on the floor. You don't come in and take over and build a whole, town. That's kind of rude and obnoxious. You come and sit down and you just join them, and you maybe play a little bit kind of quietly, and you let them guide the play. You can do this with your older children too. You just have to be a little bit more suave about how you do it, because again, they're always watching you and they might not want you near them, potentially. So you have to kind of be careful on how you get in there. But I find that this is really helpful. I think it opens the door, for me anyway, for my kids knowing that I'm there. So let's take a minute. I'm going to grab a sip of water, but I want somebody somewhere here who's willing, brave participant. Anybody have a family habit, a healthy habit that they're proud of, that they like, that they're enjoying with their family, that you would be willing to share real quick? Yes, please.
When we have dinners, we just go around the table and say, everybody says hi, their goal for the day, and they're grateful for. And it's really interesting because anything simple could be I don't know, anything simple, but it's really insightful to know what's going on in their lives.
Absolutely. That's great. That's really good. I appreciate you saying that, too, because you just jogged my memory about that's a great strategy. We often suggest it in the work that we do with families to help them connect, is by talking about high points, low points, or strengths and weaknesses, or pros and cons of the day. And then another one, you said gratitude or gratefulness, which is beautiful. I think that people should focus more on what we're grateful for and what we have and appreciate in life. You can also flip that third one to what we call a buffalo. So high, low, buffalo. High is obvious, it's a good thing. Low is something that's a challenge or potentially a negative from your day. And the buffalo is just weird. Like, just tell me something weird. Like, you saw a buffalo, in the street, think of it that way. Like, just tell me something strange that happened in your day, something that kind of like made you think twice, right? So you can kind of play with that third concept. You can add a lot of things in there. What's a goal? What's an aspiration? Or what's like the funniest thing you saw today? So you can kind of, change that idea up a little bit, which is why I like that game, actually. Anybody else have a habit? Yes, please. Wonderful. Flexibility. I appreciate your approach. Yes. Games are wonderful at all ages because there's so many ideas that you can come up with or different types of games, but the idea of letting them direct the game night is beautiful. Good. Yes. Yes. Okay. Great. So you help them plan the family trips. Wonderful. I like that too. Good. Okay. You guys are on it. I like this. Good habits. Okay. So this is just a little recap while we go to the next stage of the presentation. So we went over the parenting stages. We went over how to identify and talk about our family values, how to create that mission statement so we know what we're doing and where we're headed. We talked about those 10 core ideas of creating healthy family habits with our families. Being humble, like I had said earlier in the presentation, just realizing that we don't know everything, we'll never know everything. I often joke with my clients about if I had all the answers, I would write the book and I would be out of here. I'd be like living I don't know where. But the point being, like, nobody has all the answers. There are so many parenting books and there are so many amazing parenting books, but not one of them is right 100% for your family. And remember that whole concept of every child is different. So even though you have one book that you love, that you refer to, it might not apply very well to your second child or your third child. So that idea of like, we have to be humble and realize we are always learning. And then third, like I said about myself and my preference, being open to inserting humor when needed. I think it's helpful. We want to make sure that's an appropriate time to insert humor because some children might be offended by your, joking with them at a certain juncture, so you kind of have to feel that out. But I think as parents, if we can be flexible and we can add in that humor and we can be humble, we're going to continuously improve. Okay, so the kind of the meat here is the self-aware child. We want self-aware and we want self-confident children. These concepts play off of each other. Building self-awareness in a child and helping them grow in that capacity creates a more confident human being. And there's a lot of information on here, so I just want to go through it in summary version with you. I want to note that kids as young as small infants can be self-aware. Okay? They start their journey mostly around 15 months of age, but they're gaining self-awareness from about 2 months of age. So where we see self-aware children, kind of taking that turn is when they become those toddlers and they're like toddling through life and they're talking back to us and they're kind of like trying to challenge us. We're seeing there that they're really aware during toddlerhood that they are not us. Right? They are telling us, like, I am not you, I don't know who you are or where you come from, but I don't agree with you. And they are challenging us continuously. But when we think about babies, remember we talked about wearing the baby or holding the baby, and it's an extension of the caregiver or parent. Around 2 months of age, you see babies, they'll mimic you sometimes. They'll mimic like tongue placement. Or like if you laugh, they'll laugh. So that's the journey beginning of self-awareness, which means they're recognizing that they are a self, a person, and you are a person, right? And over the course of time, as they go into that toddler stage, they start to recognize more and more that I am me and you are you, right? And we have different, we have some similar aspects, but we are also quite different. Self-awareness is promoted in schools really nicely, actually. All of those all about me activities that they do, where they bring in pictures of the family and they talk about their favorite thing or what they want to do in the future. They talk about labeling emotions. I know in Laguna Beach there's a social emotional curriculum, right, that's promoted. That is wonderful. Not many schools do that, so it's amazing that Laguna Beach does focus on social emotional learning. That is creating self-awareness as well. And also sharing talents, like the good old bring something in, show and tell day, right? Or what is it, Star of the Week, I think that students will do, right? That is promoting self-awareness, that I am an individual that has certain things about me that are different than you. So that's just continuing to help create that difference from the parents and the family. Now, there's two types of self-awareness, though, that we see, that which is public and private. Private is when people are aware of something about themselves that others are not. Like, for example, let's just say a child was aware that their eyesight is not great. Like, it's kind of blurry, but they don't tell anybody that they just can't see in school, or they're like squinting to try to see. So that's something where they're keeping it private at that point in time. And then public self-awareness is when people are aware of how other people see them. This comes into play certainly in, I would say, middle school for sure, where we're starting to say, oh wow, people are looking at me a certain way or judging me because of how I dress, or where we live, or something along those lines. So ultimately, at the bottom here, what is self-awareness? It's having an accurate understanding of who you are. Understanding your emotions, your actions, and your abilities helps us to create success and achieve success. We're always searching for self-awareness, by the way, and self-confidence. This is a journey. Essentially, there is no end goal. It's not like somebody all of a sudden is like the most self-aware and self-confident person and they have no work to do. If you've ever met that person, stay away. Because that person is being fake, essentially. That's not a thing. It's a constant journey that we're on. So how can we support our children on this journey to being more self-aware? So these are just some examples that come up when I think about the work that I do with children and families that I work with. There's a lot of children, parents will come and they'll say, oh, Dr. Lurie, my child won't go anywhere without me. They're so scared and I can't get them to do anything. And so what we want to do with kids like that is we just want to try to join them and listen and try to not judge initially. Don't push them. Don't say they have to. Don't make the next day their full-time daycare day all of a sudden, that you're just leaving them and they're screaming, crying. We want to go slowly. We want to just try to understand where they're coming from. Try to not judge them. Try to see what they're going through. So this applies to kids in any stage, for real. As much as you think you know what's going on for them, it's really important if you can just listen to what they're saying as much as you can, without judgment, and try to understand their perspective. So in the therapy realm, we call this perspective shifting. If you could put yourself in their shoes and you could understand what they're thinking and feeling, you're going to have a lot of empathy, for starters, and then you're going to help them, you're going to be able to be better suited, I should say, to help them work through that problem. Instead of viewing it from your adult brain and your adult experience base and your mature stance and telling them all the shoulds of the steps that they should take. That's not super helpful. It's probably not even relevant, usually. So trying to perspective shift is key. So having these sorts of loving exchanges helps kids to continue to explore. If parents shut the child down, that child doesn't want to explore anymore. They stop relying on you. They stop going to you. They might even hide things from you. They don't want to tell you because you've shut it down so many times that they don't want to explore. It's not safe to explore with you. So trying to do this, I'm a big fan, though, of parents learning these strategies, but also realizing that parents should do this for themselves as well. Do it for yourself, to yourself. Be open, non-judgmental, compassionate, but also do it with your partner or with your friends or with your loved ones. Try to perspective shift. Try to be better at listening without judgment. We also want to really help children label emotions that they're having. So you can do this through your casual conversation. You can certainly do it through serious conversation if something serious happens in the family. You can do this through reading. I think finding books that have great themes and conversing about the themes or the characters can be a really nice way to do this as well. That's a little bit more of flying under the radar. You're not obviously teaching a lesson, but you're trying to. I find with our kids, because they're a little bit older, we can talk about other people's situations, like their friend is going through something, and so we might converse like, what do you think they're feeling, and why do you think they made that decision? That also helps them identify emotions and talk about different situations that are occurring and maybe different solutions that they could come up with. And so on the bottom it says reading together, certainly, and connecting with children, making sure that you're working on building their confidence as well. So this, again, is that journey. Don't expect that it starts and finishes. Realize that it's going to continue, even if they're, 30, let's say, and they're now married, or they have a child, or they're, just bought their first house. This child is still growing, right? This young adult is still growing in building confidence and gaining awareness of themselves. On the emotional one, where I said that I think that parents should help label the emotions, I find that parents can be really quick to shut that down. Sometimes I find that I guess fathers, more than mothers in the work that I do, can be quick to not want to discuss emotion. They don't want to see it. They don't want to have a whole, 20-minute conversation about it. And I just encourage parents, fathers, mothers, grandparents, nannies, anybody that we're working with, to just let the child be themselves. If they're emotional, let them be emotional. If they're non-emotional, let them be non-emotional. It's okay. Just kind of go with the flow without trying to stop it. So these are a couple of other strategies that we use in practice. Everybody's heard of I statements, I'm sure. I hope. If you've been anywhere around a therapist, I'm sure you've heard of I statements. So this is just trying to own the statement. Something like, I feel, put in the blank, emotion, when blank. So I feel hurt when you yell, or I feel hurt when we argue, or something like that. So you're trying to get the child or the young adult to own their emotion at that point in time, instead of you make me, when you do this, you cause this. That's a lot of blaming. That's pretty conflictual. It's aggressive. So we want to do more of the owning statements. Another one that I found that was really good is, we call it a bug and a wish. This is from a 2006 parenting book on positive discipline. There have to be rules around using this statement, like most things with kids, but it bugs me when, put in the blank what the other person did, and I wish you would, put in the blank. So that last part can get a little dicey, because I wish you would could be really hurtful, it could be mean, right? I wish you would die, I wish you would go away, I wish you would never come home. Kids will say that in anger, right? So there has to be rules around how we use that. If a child did use it inappropriately, if it was something you taught them, and then they used it in anger inappropriately, we don't need to shame them for that. All we need to do is say, that's not how you use the strategy, that's not nice that you said that, right? Just something very simplistic. Children will reflect, and they will flex, and they oftentimes will come back and apologize or realize that they've done something wrong. We don't need to consequence them. We don't need to throw them in their room. We don't need to tell them that they're horrible people for saying those things, because it was just a point of weakness, and they misuse the strategy, right? To hurt us, obviously, or to hurt the person that they're talking to. I love these two strategies. I think teaching kids and parents even to talk this way around tough topics can be really beneficial, because we're getting to the meat of the matter then, instead of all the emotions that kind of come and get in our way. So we also want to help children, like I said earlier in the presentation, we want them to break down problems so that we can find solutions. We really want gratitude and empathy. We are noticing that children, are growing, I would say, in empathy. I think there's a lot of positive to seeing people's stories online and social media access to people being who they are and showing their true self. And I think that kids are very empathic to, that's just how they are, or how she is, or what she wants to do, or they want to be. And I think that that's a great thing. Ultimately, I think it's helping kids to be more empathic in general. We want that empathy to come our way too, though, right? Like in our families. We want kids to be empathic towards parents, parents to be empathic towards children. We want to self-reflect, certainly. And then the growth mindset. This is another Laguna Beach school concept that is definitely promoted. Growth mindset is constantly talked about in elementary school, right? We have the capacity to change, to grow, to learn. I think this is a never-ending, lifelong concept, and I think that we should teach our kids accordingly, that they're always growing, Okay, so this is going to lay our foundation for self-confidence. So when the child understands the concept of their inner self and their outer self, they form their self-view. So in the therapy realm, we talk to people all the time about we have inner dialogue in our heads playing all the time. We're talking to ourselves, we're telling ourselves things, and so that's your inner concept. And the inner self is often pretty negative. The things that we keep quiet in our heads are pretty nasty a lot of times. And so we teach children in our realm of work, we teach children to change that inner dialogue, to change that inner self to be more positive, and to match the external. We want both of them to match. So self-confidence will develop over time. Certainly it starts very young with babies feeling nurtured and safe and supported. Also positive attention versus negative attention. We want to focus on positive regard for kids. Develops over toddlerhood with them learning new skills. That's why we celebrate walking or crawling or first words, right? It's like such a big deal. That's why there's baby books and toddler books about all these firsts, because it is an extension of growing in confidence. And then anytime a child tries to do new things, we're always looking for giving them positive regard for what they put out, not the outcome. So if they went and tried super hard at basketball, but they never, got any points on the board, that's fine. The fact that they went, they showed up, they got there, they were on time, they were like an active part of the team is what we want to focus on as well. Okay, so how can we keep building self-confidence? So some of this is repeats. As you see through the presentation, the themes continue to go from flexibility, being humble, learning and growing. So we certainly want to model. We want to teach our kids. We want to show them what we're wanting them to learn. We want to break the lessons down into smaller parts. This is very similar to school concepts. As your kids are going through school and they're learning multiplication, for example, right? They don't learn it all in one swoop, right? They do it over the course of the whole entire year. It's the same for teaching them things as well. Break it into lessons, break it into smaller parts, coach them through tricky situations, but let them have ownership. Let them try, let them fail, let them come and ask questions. Be a good role model, spend quality time, and then also be patient and remember that they're learning. Okay. So I have a survey. This is just real quick for you guys to look at. This is something that I did with people I know that I work with on a kind of confidential note. Nobody's name was included, but I asked people ages 8 to 28, what helped you most to build self-awareness and self-confidence? And I think the answers that I came up with really were narrowed into these categories: journaling, exposure to a variety of experiences, people and cultures, therapy, taking time to reflect, reading, engagement in activities I'm passionate about, exercising, keeping an open mind, surrounding myself with positive people, my parents believing in me, guiding me, and giving me opportunities for learning, accomplishing goals, and using and appreciating my mind and talents instead of focusing on looks or material things. Okay. For the sake of time, we will not reflect right now, but the idea of thinking about how are you modeling and how are you engaging in activities to help build your children's confidence? And on the same note, how are you building your own self-confidence, right, as an individual and as a parent and as a human being? We're going to insert humor because that is really necessary here. So these are the stages. Let's see if I can get it to go. My speaker shuts off, which is a good thing, I guess, but...
Some source.
Qué vergüenza, Dios mío. Like, Magdalena.
Or something to scream a little bit.
Mira, toma.
You're too slow.
Estoy nerviosa.
I told you, look at that. Too.
I'm so sorry, but I'm so sorry. Estoy nerviosa.
Okay, the funniest part is that he's videoing this for starters, so I think that's hilarious. But she's apologizing. She looks like scattered, right? Like the humor of like, we don't know, like we're trying, it's a mess, the baby's crying, causing chaos. She clearly is well-meaning and trying to get that formula into that bottle, but it's not going very well. So humble, right? Like things are messy even when we try our best. This is The Rock, by the way.
How's that? That look great? Okay. Do I look cool? Like cool, like I could go out in public like this? Okay. This can't go on Instagram. There's no way this goes on Instagram.
And it went on his Instagram. The things we do for children, joining them. This is a couple minutes. Maybe you've seen it, but it's worth it.
Good morning, sweetie. How are you?
Will you scratch my back?
Of course, sweetie. How'd you sleep? Did you sleep well?
Yes, I did. I slept in. Yeah, hey, yo, come on!
Good job.
8 hours. Where's my backpack?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Wherever you last left it.
You put it somewhere. I can't find it.
Maddox. Okay, come on. Let's get up. We don't want to be late. Let's get up.
Where's the berry Captain Crunch?
No, you don't have time for cereal. Grab a Chewy.
Only flavor you have is oatmeal
It's your own
raisin.
fault. You should have woken up earlier. Get it? Let's go.
Young man, you will eat. No, you will eat.
Oh my god. Come on. What are you doing there?
All right, I'm ready.
Why do you have a hat on? You can't even wear a hat to school.
I'm just gonna wear the hat to school and take it off.
Really trying to go outdoors. Why do you have a Bass Pro Shop on?
You wear yoga pants. I've never seen you do a downward dog.
That's it. Give me your phone. Give me your phone.
What did I even do? I didn't do anything.
Okay, young man, get up. Seriously, you're gonna be
I
late.
can teach you a deer.
No, I don't want to hear it. Yes, it does. Get up now.
Mom, I just don't feel like going to school today.
Sweetie, you're gonna have a great day at school. You're so smart. You're such a handsome boy.
You really sus, Mom.
Oh my god.
Stop.
You've got to go. What are you doing?
I can't. I'm trying to get my shirt right. Do you have a safety pin?
It doesn't matter. No. Come on. Come on.
I can't find my shoes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, have you checked the shoe closet? Are you kidding? Why? Go up.
Right.
When I walk in here, I assume you're getting ready. Oh my god.
Come here. Are you spraying me with water? Are you crazy? Mom, I found my shoes in my backpack. It's by the door.
Huh, just like I always did.
Oh, I found it.
Finally, let's go.
Wait, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oh my god.
Do you want me to pee all over your Volvo?
I swear, Max, if you get a tardy,
Oh, you're not supposed to say that where you work. Don't call me that.
you know what tardy means. Stop it.
Oh, she said I gotta cancel.
Now it's-
Okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
No, you have the mile today. You can't wear your Crocs.
Fine.
No, you can't. You're gonna hurt yourself. I'll put on tennis shoes.
I've done it in sport mode. You can go faster than anyone on my
You better watch me and talking to me. I'm about habits, okay? Get your tennis shoes.
Mom,
Yes?
do you have any baking soda?
Why? Why are you asking me that right now?
For my science project.
Why are we worried about a science project? We gotta go to school. Come on.
It's due in 30 minutes.
Zip up your backpack.
It's fine.
Stuff's gonna fall out. Just zip up your backpack.
Fall out. It's fine.
Got you at the door. Let's go.
Wait, I forgot my calculator.
No, just use the calculator on your phone. I don't need to
So
care.
you
Come on.
only use my phone in class now?
You are driving me nuts. Are you kidding? Stop it. Stop it. Come on.
Does that not sum up middle school right there? Wow, that was spot on. Okay, one more.
Having a teenage daughter is like having an office crush because you just like always like you're thinking about them a lot more than they're thinking about you, and you just like go up to their door and you're like, a bunch of us are gonna eat dinner. You're probably busy. Some of us thought it would be cool to like put a movie. Never mind them. And they just look at you like they're like looking at their phone like.
Yeah. Can you just move on?
Yeah.
Oh, that is great. Okay, last one. Those are, like, you could watch those videos, I think, over and over again for, like, pure entertainment and to laugh about this idea of, like, parenting is pretty funny when you think about it. I mean, it makes good TV, for sure. But the idea of it's silly, it's a little overwhelming at times, and we can find humor, and we can also join other parents, right, in this mission. So family bonds, remember that the core family is key for the child's development, no matter who makes up that unit. We want to be there for each other. Bonds change because people change over the course of time. There's lots of barriers like we talked about, busy schedules, extracurricular activities, fatigue, but we still want to focus on positive bonds and make sure that the foundation is core unit being together. These are a repeat in some degree of what we talked about earlier, eating together, playing together. Somebody said board game night in the room. Spending quality time, doing chores together, exposure to other families. These are just some top ideas, but there's many more where this comes from. So just trying to be creative and flexible. And this is just continuing the casual survey concept that I talked about with people that I work with. These are some of the answers that people gave me. What helped you and your family build strong bonds? And they did note things like traveling together, creating space where you can talk to family members without judgment, being vulnerable, slowing down, getting off devices. Again, these are themes that are throughout the presentation already, but reiterated by people in real time as well. Okay, closing words. This is real quick. I absolutely love that video because that child is seeing a gorgeous sunset and is communicating it and giving that view, her perspective. Just like if we think about our kids, they have their own unique perspective. Listen to the words. Let's see if this video works. There's one last one. That's my son who doesn't eat very well. But I love his actions because he's killing it in that video, for starters. And I think we should just live life that way. Like, we should just parent with that beautiful baby girl's ideas of watching the pink sunset. And we should just jump and be silly with our hat backwards and just live life, right? So as parents, think about how we can walk through our day with positive energy, with positive intention, realizing that this is a journey that we're all on, where we really are together in the journey, but also at the same time separate, because all of our children are unique and all of us are unique. And maybe take some of these concepts from today's presentation, right, out with you in your journey. And feel free, like I had said earlier in the presentation, if you want to email or you want to talk about anything anytime, I welcome that. And if we can break that mental health stigma, if we can talk more about the journey we're on and the problems that we face as a group, I think we're stronger as a group than we are individually, right? So I think we're going to take some time for questions. Is that fair? Yes? Okay. Yes. Thank you. Anybody have some burning questions? Yes.
Okay, on the way to school today.
Yeah.
This is about repetition.
Okay.
My daughter is asking for a hamster.
Yes.
I said no. You don't even feed your dog that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to an axolotl or a lizard or a frog, and she just wants a small animal.
Oh. How old is she?
She's 10 next week.
She's 10. Okay.
So just, the repetition factor, how do we get out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Constant asking and nagging. When I have explained that, she needs to take care of her existing pet in order to even have a chance.
Yeah. Oh, so I'll reiterate her question. It's okay. He was saying that he couldn't hear your question. So she has a daughter who's about 10 who is consistently asking for a small pet, but she does not show that she's responsible to take care of the dog. Correct. Dog you already have. And so, how do you stop the repetition, or how do you teach her to?
Continuous asking.
Yeah.
School in the morning if she didn't have X, Y, and Z.
Right. That's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of layers to any question, I have to say, so it's not a straightforward answer per se. One of my thoughts is that there's a little bit of boredom, certainly, that comes with people repeating things. So there might be boredom of the car ride's not that exciting and we could spice it up in some different ways, play a different game or listen to different music or like getting the brain, basically the way I think of it, funny you said hamster as one of the pets, the brain is like a hamster on a wheel and it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes, and to get the hamster off the wheel, you have to entice it. And so giving it something to kind of chew on, if you would, right, would be a good concept. So maybe reading a book in the car. So, parents many times want to just stop the behavior and make it go away. And that's not what we're looking for. We want to be flexible. We want to realize that she clearly has some desire to love animals and wants to do that. She doesn't really understand your concept of her not taking care of the dog well and how that coordinates to not having a hamster. So you reiterating that lesson is not going to be beneficial to her because she's not conceptualizing that, right? So I would first try the hamster on the wheel trick of giving her other things and see if she can get off the repetition. Certainly you can also kindly talk to her about how that bothers you when she consistently asks you questions, but I wouldn't have that conversation in the car every day with her because that's not good time for conversation. Right. Yeah. So trying to change that moment, and then later when she's more able to listen and concentrate, maybe saying, own the feeling. Like if it was like, it makes me sad that every morning we focus on a hamster, I'd really like to do something different, and I bought this game for us to try. I think she'd be more open to it. I would try it. Yeah. Yes. Hi. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Right. Right. Yeah, okay, good. So the question's about consequences and when do we use them or when do we not use them. It is a fine line, absolutely. And I think that many people live in the consequence versus reward parenting style. I don't like that. That doesn't work for me. It's not what I suggest to people. Yes, of course, there are consequences at times. For sure. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have consequences. I think that the natural consequences are much better than the given, created consequences. For example, like if you're not studying, you fail your test. Like that's a natural consequence because of what you didn't do. And now you have to figure out how to talk to the teacher and how to make that right? That's a better idea. I think positive reward is better than consequence. So what I find, to answer your question, is it is a fine line. It is a challenge. You have to figure out through those family values that we talked about, you have to figure out where you stand as a parent on consequencing, discipline, saying no, but also thinking about that concept of modeling as well. And then are we positively reinforcing the things that are going well? I would say that most parents are highlighting the negative and not the positive. Or we have the opposite, which is the parent that's always like, you're so amazing, it's going so well, oh my gosh, you do everything right. Like that's also not a great strategy either, because we want that humility, we want that middle ground, we want to show strengths and weaknesses. So I can't exactly answer that question. In my own parenting world, I would say what I have found most useful is appealing to my kids as human beings. So what that means is I tell them at the right time, like with this first example, I tell them when they're listening and when it's a good time for us to talk that I didn't like what they did, whatever it was, right? Or it really made me upset, or I felt overwhelmed when they were not ready for school in the morning and it set the tone for my day, and I don't want that to happen anymore, so how can we work together to figure this out? So I kind of go to them, it's almost like a business partner idea, like what would you do to your teammates or to the person you're working with? I try to approach them that way. They are little human beings. Like I know they're young and they lack experience and they don't have like the conceptualization that we do, but they still are little human beings. So just approaching them like another person, I find that in my realm that it works super well. My kids are really open to problem solving and they do not want to hurt me. And I understand this might change. Like someday they might want to hurt me or yell or whatever, but like in general, they want to take care of me. They want me to be okay. They love me, like for sure. And so if they know that they bothered me or impacted me, they don't like that feeling. If there's tension, and in the realm of psychology, tension creates change. We don't continue to stay tense. We change a thought or we change a behavior to decrease the tension, right? So if you put a little tension on that child in a loving, supportive way, they're gonna try to figure out how to decrease that tension. And hopefully it's a positive answer. Like we hope it's a positive, it's not a negative, but that's what I would go for on that one. Yeah. Questions? Anybody else? Yes?
Do you have any recommendations for like a workbook or a journaling book that you can use with your kids? I have a
Yes.
10-year-old girls,
Yes.
specifically about self-confidence and just
Oh.
not trying to be so perfectionist all the time.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yes, yes. Well, take the word perfect out of your vocabulary and make sure they know that that's not a thing unless it's 100% on a test. I guess could be considered perfect, score-wise. Yes, I do. I don't have them handy in my brain at the moment, but one idea I have that I highly recommend to everybody is doing these interactive parent-child journals. I don't know if you've seen them, but it's like mother and son or mother and daughter, and there's a couple different companies that do them. They're really cute. They're like kid-friendly, and basically one page is for mom or dad or whoever, caregiver, and then the other page is for the child. And you each answer questions, and then you read each other's answers. But you can do it in a very creative way. You don't have to do it like at one page at a time or the same page. You can kind of do it on the fly. I think that opens the door for conversation. I think it helps build confidence and self-reflection. But you're doing the work too, because remember, a big part of this presentation was that parents need to model positively. So if we say, here, daughter, build your self-confidence and stop being so perfect, but she's watching you, in her world anyway, not to do work, that's weird. Right? So we want to see our mom or our caregiver also doing that work as well. So a joint journal would be a cool idea. Yeah, I'll get your name and I can give you some other recommendations.
Yes.